society. Today, we will be discussing a topic about building personal and business resilience to be led by Saleha Surti. Saleha is a CIPD certified HR professional, an award-winning entrepreneur, and founder of the Coachlink. She has contributed her HR skills to leading multinational companies in the GCC region, including Myers, Total, and ExxonMobil. In 2018, Saleha was honored with the Middle East Social Innovation Leadership Award, recognizing her valuable contribution towards the society for her first startup, the Women Talent Connect. Saleha is also a winner of GCC Leadership Award in 2019. Saleha launched the Coachlink in 2019 based on her own experience in finding a certified coach in the UAE. The Coachlink is basically an online platform that will help you connect with a certified coach, personalized to your goals, language, and budget. That's Saleha in a nutshell. And now, I'm passing the table to Saleha to introduce two of the Women Empowerment Ambassadors as her panelists.
Thank you very much, Kadila. What a lovely introduction. Thank you so much for that. So yes, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are going to be discussing the topic of building personal and business resilience, which is such an important topic, and not just in times of uncertainty, but really at all times. And if you're a person who sets goals, and Benkhallouk, who is an award-winning senior consultant with a broad scope of expertise and exposure to international markets from Americas, Africa, Middle East, and Asia. Hanane is also an executive director of Sustained Leadership, a consultancy specialized in strategic leadership, innovation, management, diversity, and inclusion. Welcome, Hanane.
Thank you.
We've also got Kirsten Westholter, if I'm pronouncing your name right, Kirsten.
Yes, you do.
Here with us, who is a business strategist with over 20 years of experience in consultancy and project management across Europe and UAE for SMEs and international companies such as Adidas, Landmark Group, and ADIB. She's passionate about business improvement and currently focusing on helping business owners to adapt to market changes and teaching them how to be a doer, thinking outside the box, triggering innovation potential, and realizing sustainable business growth. Huge warm welcome, Kirsten.
Thank you so much.
So, Hanane, if I may start with you with our first question for today, and give our audience a little bit more insight on what resilience really is. We are talking about resilience, but if we dig a little bit deep down there. So what is resilience, and can you share an example of how you've recently had to practice your resilience muscles in your business?
Sure. Well, thank you, Saleha. Happy to be here, part of one of the panels of International Women Entrepreneurship Society. And thank you for having me. So resilience in simple words for me is really being able to bend without breaking. And I remember, everybody talks about resilience. It's become like a buzzword, and there are different definitions. But to me, it's really about being able to bend without breaking when certain circumstances really or certain setbacks come in the way. I remember at the start of COVID, before the lockdown, I was having yoga class, and my instructor told me, the usual as we were practicing the new pose, and she said, "You feel the stretch." And after the class, that kept resonating. She always says that, but that day it resonated well because it's really exactly what happened. It's really about feeling the stretch. And I told her, yes, I feel it and it's painful. She said, well, that's the way. You need to feel pain so that your muscle, once your muscle gets stronger, then it will be easier and you will be perfect in the pose. And that analogy for me, I just took it from that yoga class and thought this is exactly what's happening to us. You're really feeling the stretch because you are put into a new pose, a new position that you haven't practiced before. But you have to overcome that pain, and you need to really allow your muscle to build, allow your muscle to become resilient for you to really overcome those setbacks. And first example that always comes to mind is the American inventor Edison. We all know without him we wouldn't be enjoying what we're enjoying today, inventor of electricity. He always said, I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. So it's that kind of resilient mindset that we need. When a setback comes, when a failure comes, do we really give up, or do we say, well, I have found a way that doesn't work, let me find other ways. And just like everybody else, I had to go through the disruption that we all had to our way of life, to our lifestyle, the way we work. When the lockdown happened, I work in different international markets, so definitely having to go through this crisis disrupted the way I work. And first thing I had to do is to really absorb that shock, because I feel that resilience is about being able to absorb the shock and not being in denial. And really, I sat down myself and said, yes, these are adverse times. This is difficult. I'm not going to lie to myself and say, oh, let's just wait, things will get better, because I feel that that's the first setback, and that's what we don't want to do. So I sat down and said, yes, it's gonna be tough, and these are adverse times. Once you acknowledge that, then you overcome it and move on. So I feel that the first step is to really be able to acknowledge what you're going through so that you can absorb it and you move on from just keep on resonating that same failure, that same setback, and then find ways of how to change things so that you can keep moving forward.
Yes, I love that. And I really love the examples you shared as well, Hanane. Kirsten, would you like to share your perspective? Because I know there are different perspectives on how people see resilience, and it's also a very broad area to explore. So would you like to share yours?
No, of course. And first of all, also thanks for being here. And Hanane, I think I'm totally with you with like most of the things, or actually everything you said. For me also, resilience is all about adaptability. So being able to adapt to, let's say, unforeseen circumstances, a crisis, a pandemic like we have right now. And it is also something where you learn not to keep on waiting until like things change. You need to indeed take it in and be able to change as well. And yes, it is painful. Actually, very recently, somebody told me you must see it as a kind of grief, actually. And it's not only grief you experience when you're losing people you love, but also when you're not able to do things you're usually doing, and you find that like you're missing something. And for me, resilience is then also understanding, okay, I might not have what I had before, but I can work around it, or I can see other things that I can do. And for me, I always compare it also to certain materials. Like if we say that materials have a good resilience, I would say they're able to find back their shape and form again. But we as human beings are actually much more than that. I think we can move beyond that point and even learn from our experiences and be able to adapt over and over again. We're strong. And I think that is the part I wanted to say here. And for me, in addition, as an example, what happened to my own company, I'm a strong advocate of practice what you preach. And I preach actually to take a look at business models and really to see if everything is working. I had to really fully restructure my own business model, otherwise my business wouldn't survive, let alone have growth again. So that's also an example of resilience, I would say.
It is. Thank you so much for sharing that, and especially your own personal experience, Kirsten. We've seen, and one question which I know which is very common, and I'm also very curious to hear your views on it. Is resilient the same as surviving, or let me not go there, or shall I just put it very open? Is being resilient same as surviving? And what are your thoughts around this? Kirsten, if you want to go first.
Yeah, of course. No, for me, these are two different things. For me, actually, resilience has a much more positive view, and also a view towards the future, that you do see certain opportunities, you look beyond what is right now. Of course, the first step is dealing or coping with a certain situation. So as we have right now, dealing with the impact of COVID-19 on our society, on our social life, on our businesses. But if you take a look at like survival or a survival mechanism, it's more restricted. And for me, it also has a little bit of a negative thing, like purely surviving, purely dealing with what is now, but maybe not even capable of being or looking in the future, seeing like a bit of growth again, seeing your opportunities. And for me, it's different angles, positive and more towards, for me, it's a little bit more negative, the survival part.
Okay, and Hanane?
Well, if you want to use the word survival, I would say yes, it's about being able to adapt so you can survive in any condition. You can change that shape, as Kirsten mentioned, like those materials that change the shape, but they don't die. They just change the shape and they adapt. So it's the ability to survive no matter what the conditions are, and to be able to absorb those shocks and stay on going and moving on. Yeah.
Okay, I like hearing different perspectives, because we've seen that, and also speaking to a lot of business owners, we've seen that because some businesses have been hit so severely, at the moment, what they're really focusing on how they can survive the businesses. So it's really like going through day and day stuff. And I've also seen, and I think I heard somebody else mention this as well, that I think what we have lost is our ability to see the bigger picture, because we are just looking on how to survive, like how to go on from day to day, not really looking ahead. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think a big part of bouncing back or resilience is also how we look after ourselves. What has really come into spotlight at the moment, and I'm sure you all will agree, is the importance of mental health. So what advice do you have for professionals who to look after their own well-being, or if you like to share how you look after your own well-being, in running all of this together? Hanane.
Okay. Well, I would say you cannot serve from an empty cup. So definitely, and I love to use analogies, and I always use that when I speak to people I work with or the people I care about that self-care. I always use the example of when you are on the airplane, they always ask you to put your mask first before helping others. So it's very, very important to remember that nothing can survive or thrive unless you take care of yourself, because you are the source of that. And again, I go back to acknowledging those negative emotions, because there's so much pressure. I feel there's so much pressure from society that we all have to be positive and have positive outlook and be happy no matter what, which is fine. I appreciate that, and we should all have a positive outlook. But in adverse times, it's also inhumane to just think that no matter what's happening, I just have to show that happy face, because sometimes it's really contradictory to what's going on inside. And it's that, and probably the social media pressure plays a big role, because everybody wants to show that image. And I'm speaking really very boldly here, and I think we can all relate to that. So the way I've been doing it, and with my team as well, and the people around me during COVID, is every day we either journal our emotions, or if we are in a team, before we do our meeting, we check in first. How are you feeling? We say it. We have to say it verbally and acknowledge, I'm feeling scared. Yes, what I am feeling scared. I'm human. And there is uncertainty, and there is no harm in acknowledging those emotions, because if you don't, you internalize them. And that's why a lot of people fall into that mental illness, because they want to show a different face because of that pressure, and they don't acknowledge the negative emotions. Emotions are both positive and negative, and we have to allow ourselves, we don't want to dwell on it, but the more you kind of deny it, the more it's going to internalize, and it can really amplify. So I used to wake up and say, okay, today I'm feeling hopeful, fine, I know that. Or today I'm really anxious, and I say I am feeling anxious, and then I get done with it. Now that I acknowledge it, I move on with my day. And we do that also with groups. So I think my first advice is to really just stop and be, have that self-compassion and allow yourself to have that polarity of sometimes things can be, we can have negative emotions, acknowledge them and move on, rather than wanting to show a face that is really contradictory. So it's about harmony, it's about creating that balance, and it's about allowing oneself to self-empathize as well. Empathy is very important. So that's my example of what I advise the people around me, and I hope it will be helpful.
Thank you, Hanane. Kirsten, would you like to share your daily routine, or how you sort of, what is it that you follow as well?
Sure. And I won't repeat Hanane because it fully resonates with me as well, the things you said. Okay. And definitely also the part of the recognition of your emotions. I think maybe as a little bit add on to that, I would say, like, it is okay not to be okay or not to feel okay. That is something actually I also learned myself during the last months. Sometimes we are very, very harsh on ourselves, and we do have the compassion with other people and the understanding often, but when it comes to yourself, it's like high pressure, or it's like, why am I feeling like this? And I think it's good to acknowledge that, indeed, like, it's okay how I feel right now. And also, I would say to talk about it, and then mainly to your inner circle. It helps to share these emotions because you get a lot of similar stories. And I also found out that some even business contacts of mine, they told me, or they asked me, Kirsten, I feel like really depressed, and I feel this and this and this, and am I still normal? I got these type of questions, and I'm so happy that people are expressing these emotions. And I actually think that it's a strength to show this vulnerability. And it is not a vulnerability, but it is for me also a strength to open up about certain emotions. So my advice is also to indeed acknowledge it about yourself. If you have a bad day, sometimes you can do a couple of things. If you don't have too many things scheduled for that day, maybe it is good to take some or part of the day for yourself and to reflect, or just to feel, to let it be. And there's always the next day, and that would be an advice. Second one, also to talk about it, specifically to the people you trust. Support each other, I would say. And in the end, of course, our businesses are important. It's important to have your growth, or have the economics, the money from your business. But once we lose our health, mental health, or like in general your health, then it's a real different type of situation. It's not easy to get back.
Yes.
That is what I wanted to say on this question. And it's a very important topic.
Yeah, some wonderful advice from both of you. Thank you so much. And I also wanted to ask. It's not, I didn't mention this earlier, but was it always? I mean, did you always have this kind of mindset, or I would say, in what stage of your career or in your journey did you sort of build this mindset or this resilience? Were you always like that when you started off, Hanane?
I think resilience is a muscle, just like, again, the example of the yoga, it's a muscle that needs to be built. It's just that awareness, self-awareness, and that willingness to really keep pushing. I think it goes back to when you have a strong purpose. It always drives you to find ways to survive and thrive and keep going. So it's definitely, it's a journey. It's part of my journey of growth. I don't think it's everybody's born to be resilient, because resilience is about being to know how to adapt, and to adapt means you have to go through setbacks. So it's really something that you'll learn across your journey. You learn along the way as you go through failures, through setbacks, and when you keep really connected to that big purpose, to that ambition that you have, to that passion that you have, whatever you want to achieve, that's what really drives you and makes you find ways to build that muscle. But it takes practice, again, because a muscle, just like when we go to the gym, it is painful in the beginning. It will be painful because you are building something new, but if you don't go through that pain, you're not going to build that strength. So resilience is really like building a muscle. It takes pain, it takes commitment, and it takes practice. You have to keep doing it to really build that strength and build that muscle. So yeah, I learned it through experience.
Yeah, excellent. And the reason I asked this is also because I was interviewed for a podcast yesterday, and someone asked me about resilience, and I had to reflect back to the initial stages of my career when I was in corporates, and I was just thinking, I always say that I built resilience over the last 5 years in my entrepreneurial journey. But when I reflected, I realized that I did have some element of resilience even back then. But I was just not conscious about it. But yeah, it definitely got better over time. Kirsten, would you like to share?
Yeah. Sure. Yes, my opinion is also that it is something you already have in you, and indeed it's a type of muscle. For me, I would say yes, I've always had it in me, but maybe I called it differently. For me, it's also often about like perseverance, just carrying on, find indeed your ways, and that started for me very early in life, actually already when I was like a child growing up. But specifically the last couple of years after my move to Dubai, because actually I did fully change my life with my move here. I had to practice it much more, and since beginning of last year I started with my company Rising Phoenix Consultancy, and yeah, of course I went through like difficult times, and you find your way, and that's also where I always have something like being able to think, maybe not even outside the box anymore, but without a box. Why would we still have like that box in front of us? And luckily I'm quite creative. I'm